Okay, here we go. Focus. Speed.
Hey, Lightning, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
The rookie sensation came into the season unknown, but everyone knows him now.
You're my hero, Mr. McQueen.
Fred, thank you.
He knows my name. He knows my name.
If you ever plan to motor west,
California, here I go.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of We'll Review It Our Shelves, the podcast where we review the movies on our shelves. Every 2 weeks we'll take a randomly selected movie from our collection, and I promise you it's random, and we'll review it ourselves. I'm Brian Morgan, and to my right, and across the country is...
To the west is Dan Bergman.
Awesome. And here we are again. For those of you that listened to our Monty Python and the Holy Grail episode, we recorded that early in July. We are recording this episode a little bit later. I had some business travel to it and personal travel to attend to, so that sort of got in the way of recording. But because we released these on a 2-week schedule, it should be totally transparent to our listeners, of which we have at least 7. We actually have over 100 downloads now, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, and we actually have an international audience.
Yeah, I know we mentioned that on the last one, but since then we've grown by 2 more countries, Switzerland and India, and that's pretty awesome. I don't know who's out there, but hello. I don't know how to speak your language, or I would say it in that.
Guten Tag.
Sure.
Close enough.
I'm good there.
German.
Yes. Yeah. No, I was going for the language in India. My Hindi's a little weak.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't know any Hindi.
Okay, it's a lot weak.
I know a little bit of German, very little German, but hopefully he understood, because I know the Swiss have a different form of German.
Yes, but it's still a Germanic
I hope it's
language.
Close enough that he understood.
I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
All right. So episode 10, double digits.
Yeah, we're moving up in the world, aren't we?
Yes, we are, and we are visiting another Pixar movie, because we've already done The Incredibles, and that movie is Cars.
Cars, which, it's funny how our intro we talked about, Dan's Out West, because this movie is, as we stated, it's kind of a bit of a road movie that turned into a fish out of water with somebody basically heading west.
Yeah, trying to get to LA for that big race. So, as always, Dan, how did this get on your shelf?
Well, I don't have a better answer than, I am such a completist when it comes to certain collections, and this is a Pixar movie. So whether or not this movie was going to be bad or not, it was predestined to be on my shelf, because with the previous, Toy Story, Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles, Cars was a foregone conclusion. This is going to be on my shelf.
I have pretty much the same answer. In fact, I think I have all of the movies that you mentioned on my shelf, and obviously the follow-ons. I would like to, before we get too deep into this, since we reviewed The Incredibles in our first 5 episodes, I remember that one of the things we had talked about was, had Pixar peaked? And I had mentioned the Pixar movie Planes. And then doing some research for this episode, I realized or discovered that Planes is in fact not a Pixar movie. While it's in the same universe as Cars, it's not a Pixar movie. It's just a straight up Disney movie.
Yeah, when you first mentioned that to me, I was a little bit of shock and disbelief, but I have a copy of Planes, and yes, you are correct that it is not a Pixar production. The box does not hold the Pixar logo, although it is advertised from above the world of Cars, and it does use the Cars movie logo. So, probably just one of those used with permission. But it's Disney, so I don't think they need much permission. They say, we want it, we got it, it's ours, we rule.
Exactly. I think they gave themselves permission. So when this movie came out, I will say that I was kind of had, and I think we were talking about this earlier, and I don't want to steal your thunder, so stop me if you've heard this. We were talking about the Pixar anticipation, where you're looking at it going, or looking at the trailers saying, well, what's this going to be about?
Yeah, as I said, Toy Story, when it came out, it was pretty obvious what, not necessarily what the exact plot was going to be, but, what it was going to be about. Toys coming to life. Kind of Disney-ish at the time, because, I don't think Disney quite owned Pixar just yet. I think there was just like a loose association. But you kind of had an idea with Toy Story, and the same with A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2. But when Monsters, Inc. came, it was like, wow, that's kind of weird. What could that be about? And of course, when the later trailers came out, they gave you little hints about what the plot was. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And same with Finding Nemo, and then The Incredibles. And Cars was one of those anticipation things, which is like, seriously? I don't want to say it was revolutionary, the movie concept, but it was definitely something that I have not seen. Living cars making a
It
story.
wasn't the first movie about anthropomorphic cars. There have been plenty of animated films, or animated shorts, Warner Brothers cartoons and the like, that were about
Hanna-Barbera.
Right. Speed Buggy.
I think of Speed Buggy. That's exactly the one I was thinking of.
And one of my personal favorites from the 70s, which was a live-action show from the Croft Super Show, was Wonder Bug. Do you recall that?
I vaguely remember that.
It was a rundown dune buggy named Schlepp Car, and they found a magic horn in the junkyard, and then when they put it on the car and they honked it, he turned into the wonderful Wonder Bug.
Yeah, the little beachcomber dune buggy with a glitter finish.
Yes. I loved that show, so let's not continue on that.
No, but there were others too. The other Disney one that a lot of people neglect to remember is Herbie. Was a little Volkswagen bug.
Yep.
He didn't talk.
And made a series of movies.
Yeah, and they even had a remake with Lindsay Lohan, which kind of came and went. Yes, and to our listening audience, Brian is making a face.
I may or may not have rolled my eyes so loud you could hear it.
There was another cartoon series, and I tried to find it, and it's the thing with Google search. It's an amazing thing, but if you don't ask the right questions, you're not going to get the answers you're looking for. But there was a cartoon series that I used to watch every Saturday morning, which I think may or may not have been...
Was it Turbo Teen? Because if it was Turbo Teen, that would be totally awesome.
Well, it was the car, the main character, was kind of a red racing type car, and he had a girlfriend.
It was a kid that turned into a car?
No, I don't think it was a kid that turned into a car. These were anthropomorphic cars living in a world where cars were the dominant species.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
So maybe it wasn't Turbo Teen.
It was not Turbo Teen.
Okay, but I do remember it's like the main character was a red car. He didn't talk. He spoke in honking his horn. But everybody else could talk. And his girlfriend, which was like a pink little car, a little convertible, she could talk. Don't remember the name of it. I remember it was a Saturday morning cartoon.
But this poor little guy had a speech impediment.
Yes, he did. But every now and again, you will find on YouTube these little theories about where Disney stole their ideas. And I say stole because that's the language they use. It's not that I endorse that word myself. But it could have been that from that cartoon series. Because it's obscure. Nobody knows about it. They made a movie out of it, and obviously nobody's brought it up yet. So I don't know. Maybe somebody's going to do some research after listening to this, and it might become a thing on Reddit. Who knows? You're
really fixated on Reddit.
That's where I get all my news.
Oh, okay. I was fixated on Turbo Teen only because one of the podcasts that I listened to did a review of the one and only season of Turbo Teen. And I remembered that show from when I was a kid. It came out in 82, 83, and I was right on the cusp of, being too old to watch Saturday morning cartoons, according to my parental unit people. And one, you're never too old for Saturday morning cartoons. And two, Turbo Teen hella rocked. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, well, I Google searched it, and it does. It definitely has the '80s cartoon look to it, and I imagine when I was a wee little lad at the time, I probably would have found that pretty awesome too. But unfortunately, I don't recognize it. I'm looking at it, and it just does not ring any bells in my head.
Well, It doesn't have to.
Oh.
It's part of my childhood, and I loved it.
Yep. So I don't know. Who knows? One of these days I'll find that little cartoon. But like I said, if our listeners, if you have any bells ringing in your ears about, it's like, hey, yeah, I saw that cartoon, and it was called, I'd appreciate in the listener feedback, because I getting to that age where I'm thinking a lot of nostalgic stuff.
Yeah, it is interesting, and that's something that that Cars kind of does. It kind of gives you that sense of nostalgia because it talks about Route 66 and slowing down a little bit, and as we get older we find ourselves looking back going, holy crap, it's been 40 some odd years already. I'm 40, insert X here. I look at my 17-year-old daughter and go, you were little, you were just a little tiny thing. And it goes by so fast that occasionally you've got to take that drive down Route 66 instead of just flying down Interstate 40.
Yeah, to kind of quote the movie. Okay, so this is not a direct quote from the movie, but don't just drive to make good time, drive to have a good time.
Exactly, and that's part of the draw to this movie, is it does wax so nostalgic of the 50s and early 60s and that sort of time frame where life moved at a slower pace before we started the highway system. It really does harken back to those slower days of yesteryear.
And this is the second part of that Pixar anticipation that I always feel with most of these movies, is that even though I have this apprehension that we stated, what could this movie possibly be about? How could they possibly make a good movie based on anthropomorphic cars? But they did it, and this movie spoke to people on so many different levels and in such a succinct and artistic way, and which is a great way to bring up the other thing about Pixar films is the Pixar's propensity for its little Easter eggs and little bits of trivia that they insert. And I believe you said you had some things about trivia that you were fascinated by in this movie.
There were some NASCAR specific pieces of trivia that, or rather,
you're a NASCAR fan, correct?
Yes, I do like the NASCAR. I like it for one, the wrecks. I mean, I'm not gonna try and blow smoke up anybody's butt. I like to see the cars wreck. I mean, I do like when they walk away. That's a big thing for me. I admire the safety mechanisms that are built into the vehicles, but there's something very neat and cool when they pull up the computer model and they show the airflow over the car, and then they talk about the draft and how one car will disrupt the airflow for another, and all of the ways that just the air over the car will disrupt the car's performance in their pursuit of maximum speed. It's actually very fascinating. There's some stuff that the cars now are very susceptible to, is what's called side draft. And you've seen the wind tunnels where they put the cars in there and they put smoke on there and show the flow of the air. So you've got that air bubble around you. When one car gets up next to another car at 180 miles an hour, the air forms a cushion. So when the two air fields, for lack of a better word, get together, the air flows, you can disturb the flow of the other car and slow them down so that you can pass them just by getting up next to them in the rear quarter panel. And from the physics standpoint of it, it's impressive just to know what kind of effect that has. So that's actually why I like NASCAR. It's a lot of engineering, it's a lot of science.
Okay, so based on what you've just described, and obviously that really shows us, how much of a fan and how much you really pay attention, do you think that Cars portrayed that accurately, or at least close enough to where it piqued your interest in this movie?
And that's what I actually wanted to talk about. Some of it, no. I mean, just the ease with which he passed and all that kind of stuff. But in the very beginning race, when they set it up for the three-way tie and he's driving around, one, NASCAR is a team sport. I don't care what anybody says. And I also believe it's a sport.
No, I agree. And, without going into that, yeah, I don't have any dispute against that, especially the team aspect.
Yeah, because if you don't have somebody down there putting fuel in and changing the tires, or in the parlance of NASCAR, tires, then you're not going to win races. If somebody doesn't change, a 1 second difference on a pit stop can make or break you in a race. But it's all about that team dynamic, and I like that because it is one of the understated parts of the sport. So in the first race, and again we're still at the very beginning of the movie, when Lightning keeps pulling in and just getting gas and no tires, tires make a difference. I could tell you, watch NASCAR any given Sunday and occasionally on Saturday, and they will talk about tires. I get it. It makes a difference, but it does. And you can see how the tires wear, and that's also pretty flippin' neat. But if you don't have a good team backing you up, you're not going to do crap. The other piece is, in that race, when they're at track level and they're following the cars, and you see those little bits of debris flying off, from a computer animation standpoint, that is amazing. Because if you watch NASCAR during a caution or whatever, they have the cameras that will look right down the track, and towards the outer edge, it's forced out by the drivers as they drive around, are chunks of rubber from the tires, and they call that the marbles.
Yeah, I remember on one of the special features in the making of, they had mentioned that, and that's because I believe Lasseter and I forget the other guys, the head honchos were automotive fans themselves, and they talked about that in the making of feature, that they really needed to animate that to make this real to them. You know, because this was their baby, you know, because I mean, I think they were at least as big of fans as you are, if not more. But then again, they have a lot of money, so I think they can afford to be bigger fans than you.
Probably.
But to want to put that much detail, you know, is definitely a lot of heart and a lot of fandom into that. And yeah, like you said, from a CGI standpoint, that is incredible.
Yeah, and that was a part of my fascination with this movie from the get-go. I bought into the racing because they included little details like that. So from that aspect, that was kind of what drew me in. What I loved was that they got actual race car drivers and NASCAR personalities into the movie. So Daryl Cartrip is Daryl Waltrip, who is a well-known race car driver from days gone by. The King, the blue car, the number 43, that is voiced by Richard Petty, who is the King, the 7-time Winston Cup champion. He is lauded as the champion of champions for NASCAR. Dale Earnhardt Jr. was in there. Jeff Gordon was in there. And then two of my personal favorite characters were the Rust-eze brothers. Do you know who they were?
Yeah, they actually do a automotive podcast themselves.
Well, it's a radio show on NPR.
Is it a radio show or is it a podcast?
It's a radio show. It's a podcast as well.
Okay, yeah, I guess I know it as a podcast. And that's the funny thing. I didn't know that until well after Cars had been out for a long time, and I just stumbled across it somehow, and it's like, hey, those are the guys from Cars, the Rust-eze brothers.
Yeah, it's Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers.
Yeah, and that's the thing that Pixar does often, is that they have created such a trivia-rich environment for nerds like us to just go through these movies. And, you know, I mean, obviously it can be genre specific, okay? I mean, like you're talking about the little nuggets on the track for automotive fans and NASCAR fans and everything. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, that's so accurate and everything, that for something for you to get excited about. Personalities, like you said, the voices of these NASCAR stars, or radio personalities who just talk about cars who are included in this and everything. And of course, for me, I always look for the Pixar specific Easter eggs. I believe when we talked about The Incredibles, that was considered the only Pixar film where the Pizza Planet truck did not feature. For people who don't quite know, the Pizza Planet truck it's an old Toyota truck that's used to deliver pizzas and has like the pizza place logo on the side and a model rocket ship on the top, and it features in every single Pixar movie except The Incredibles. And I was challenged not too long ago saying, well, it wasn't in Cars either. I looked for it and it wasn't there. This one is a tricky one because he doesn't show until, and of course it's obvious he's a living car in this one, but he's in the ending scene when they're in California and he's in the audience in the arena, and it's one of those things where you really have to look for him.
Yeah, he's just snuck in there.
He's one of the crowd, but he is in there. Again, such a trivia / Easter egg rich environment that nerds like us just really love about. That's something that makes Pixar great, is that they consistently do that.
They absolutely do, and they are very adept at making a, at the very least, heartwarming story, if not downright touching, and including all the trivia. So you don't get lost in the, I gotta find that thing, I gotta find that thing. You watch the movie, you're sucked in by the animation and the story. Again, during The Incredibles, I slammed planes, and now knowing that that is not a Pixar movie, I got to agree with your previous assessment. I don't think that Pixar has really come down yet.
Well, I mean, some people would say Cars 2 was probably their low point, but I personally didn't think it was that bad. Probably not their best, but again, not that bad. And I haven't seen Cars 3 yet, so I can't make that assessment.
I won't spoil it for you, but I liked it. There we go. Not even going to talk about it. I went and saw it with Cassidy.
Cool. But you said you liked it, so it can't be that bad.
Yeah, no, it wasn't as good as this one, but it was better than Cars 2. So it was in between, at least in my opinion. And since we have a movie review podcast, our opinions count.
Our opinions matter.
Well, they mattered before that, but now they count even more because other people are listening. So we had talked earlier about what type of movie this was, that sort of road trip, fish out of water type of story. Does it remind you of any other specific movies, or was it just me?
Well, you brought up the connection between our previous podcast of Tu Wong Fu, where it was a journey headed out west and they wind up in some little town and everybody learns something new and personalities change.
Yeah, that was the fish out of the water part of it.
Yeah, Tu Wong Fu didn't focus too much on the road trip itself, but I think about as equally as Cars did.
Yeah, Cars, I mean, the road trip was an excuse to get Lightning to Radiator Springs. So in that way, it was exactly the same.
So yeah, other than that, it made me think of other movies, but I just can't recall the names just yet.
And I was struggling with that for a while, and while I was doing some research for this episode, I ran across an entry in Wikipedia that there was a lawsuit filed that said that this movie bears a striking resemblance to the movie Doc Hollywood. If you recall that movie with Michael J. Fox.
I do. I never saw it, but I do recall.
Oh, I saw it a long, long time ago. It wasn't nearly as memorable as Cars, but there have been some who say that Cars was plagiarized from the script of Doc Hollywood.
Interesting. Guess we'll have to check that movie out.
Yeah, I might have to go watch that again. It might be on Netflix or something, because I darn sure don't own it. You?
I do not.
Well, we'll get around to it.
Well, until either one of us owns it, we won't be reviewing it.
Yeah, well, it'll just be a movie that exists in the universe, and we'll let other people know about it. So what did you think of the voice acting in this one? I know we went in depth in the Incredibles episode, but were you taken by surprise by Owen Wilson in this role?
Yes, I was surprised by that, and it kind of goes in line with the Pixar anticipation that I have to hear Owen Wilson doing the voice of the main character. You know, I don't have an incredibly high opinion of the actor, but I gotta say that this is one of his better works. I know him from, raunchy comedies.
Sure, the sophomoric humor comedies, the immature man boy.
Yeah, which is funny once, but for me, not much beyond that. Again, that Pixar anticipation is like, really, how good can this be? But I like Pixar again. Surprised by how much depth that his character had, how much heart and how much I actually cared about him, towards the end of the film.
I was surprised as well, and for pretty much the same reasons. I'm not a huge Owen Wilson fan as an actor. I've liked a couple of his movies, but I never really gave him a whole lot of credit, and I wasn't expecting a whole lot, although Pixar had established a reputation by that point, so I figured it might be okay, and everybody else could sort of make up for it, but he did a great job.
Indeed he did. Like I said, it's just his ability. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to give partial credit to the directors, but I mean, to actually create a character that I care as much as I did about him at the end, that's not something you dismiss.
Sure. No, and it shows that he's capable of emoting vocally. That's one of the biggest things about animated movies is, can you carry that off with your voice while they make the animation match?
I think they were able to utilize Owen Wilson very well to that end. But, as you described him, too, is like, the man boy. I think that's what Pixar looked at, because Lightning McQueen at the very beginning was exactly that. He was a man boy. Undisciplined, selfish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Add any other adjective that fits that. And, I think that to see that growth, he gets arrested and he's getting forced to work, and then he learns his lessons from Doc Hudson, which, again, if we're going to talk about voice talent that Pixar pulls out. Paul Newman. Wow, that's a Hollywood legend. You know, it's also attached to automotive history, you know, because he was a big race car driver for the longest time. But to have him as his mentor and then actually see him grow, mature, and, you know, it's just like, oh, well, you know, Pixar does it again, man. Another movie I love. Another movie I can watch 1,000 times. And even if I wasn't a completist, I'd buy it.
Yeah, and see, and again, that goes back to my take on it is, I'm not a completist. I bought it because I wanted it.
You know, it's not hard to see why. The things that we love about this movie really make it stand out.
And that goes to, well, we're still on the topic of voice talents. If you look even deeper into the movie, George Carlin as the stoned out Volkswagen bus.
Yes, the hippie.
Yeah, Cheech Marin as the lowrider with the paint job. Granted, it's playing up to a stereotype, but he apparently was okay with it, and he rolled with it and had a good time.
Hey, what did we establish in Tu Wong Fu? Stereotypes exist for a reason.
True, there we go.
If we're really going to go with stereotypes too, Larry the Cable Guy as Mater, as the bucktooth hick, you know.
I was going to go there. But one of the voice talents that I didn't recognize until I was actually on IMDb, and maybe I knew it before, maybe I didn't, but I didn't recall it at the very least, was Michael Keaton as Chick Hicks.
Oh, it took you a while to figure that out?
Yeah, I don't listen to Michael Keaton talk a whole lot, so it didn't occur to me that that was him. And as I was rolling through IMDb, getting ready to record this, I was like, oh, really? Michael Keaton did that? That's pretty darned awesome. I mean, I caught some of the other voices before I thought about him. You know, like Darryl Waltrip and Bob Costas as Bob Cutlass, who is, you know, big in the NBC sports world. I knew about Click and Clack the Tappet brothers before I realized that Michael Keaton was in this movie.
You want to hear something funny as to what really tipped me off that was Michael Keaton doing the voice of Chick Hicks? To me, it sounded a lot like Beetlejuice. And so when I heard it and everything, and some of the things that he said, I'm like, is that Michael Keaton? And then when the end credits roll and you look for his name and like, oh, there he is. Oh God, that was him. Wow, you know.
Yeah, I might have to go watch it again just to pay special attention to Chick Hicks, because he wasn't in the movie a whole lot. I mean, the movie wasn't really about him, so.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, you can say he was his nemesis, but not really.
Yeah, he was just a guy to make you angry and look for something to root for Lightning for. Like, oh, Lightning's the good guy because this guy's doing bad things. Because really, Lightning is, like you said earlier, selfish, self-absorbed. He's not really a good guy. He's just not an a-hole.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He is his own antagonist. He is the obstacle that he needs to overcome. That, to me, is a much more compelling storyline, because you tend to be your own worst enemy.
Yeah, when he sees his own, or rather, when we see him grow, then that's the movie. It's not about doing something brave, it's about personal growth, and that's where Pixar excels, because most of their movies are about the emotional growth as opposed to fighting some big bad or getting over some big obstacle. It's all about self-discovery.
Yeah, so I think, what you described there is the formula that really makes Pixar what it is, something that we really enjoy consistently through 18 movies. I believe when we talked about Ant-Man, we said that Marvel had an achievement of, 15 movies so far that all have been great. 13 or 15, somewhere in that neighborhood. Pixar's done 18, and they've all been pretty darn good. And I think that formula, that journey of self that you describe, is pretty much the goose that laid the golden egg, They're able to tap that.
Yeah, and the key to that really puts them over the top is they make it accessible.
To just about everybody, too. That's the thing. It's kid-friendly, but adult-relatable.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you kind of get back to talking about voice talent. Other ones, I don't know if you can call him a B-lister or whatever, but, maybe not as known. Jeremy Piven. He's been in a number of movies. Mostly, again, the sophomore comedy style. But he was Harv. You only heard him in voice. He wasn't an actual car, but he was Lightning McQueen's agent. To me, that, like I said, I've seen a number of Jeremy Piven's movies, so that was, to me, was a very recognizable voice. But, another voice talent, and he was the lost minivan who showed up in Radiator Springs that everybody jumped on because they thought, oh, customers! The actor's name is Richard Kind, and he's done a few Pixar films himself. He was in A Bug's Life, he was in Inside Out, he was also in that TV series Mad About You,
He was ironically also in a television series with Michael J. Fox, Spin City.
Oh, yeah. There was that. So, again, I don't know if you're calling him a B-lister is entirely accurate, but, he's an actor that everybody knows but probably doesn't know his name, but will know his voice and know his face if they saw it.
Well, while you were talking about that, I looked on IMDb to look at his filmography, and as soon as I saw the full-size picture, because the one I was looking at was tiny, I was immediately, oh, I know who he is.
Exactly. He's that guy in that film. That was an interesting documentary, by the way. Just a side note. That guy in that film, I think it was called or something. It was about actors of that caliber who you see in a bunch of films, but are not quite A-list stars.
Yeah, they're just good character actors that...
Yeah, exactly.
That you want to work with because they do good work, but they don't carry their own movies. Yeah, Tom Hanks was in this, Tim Allen, Billy Crystal, John Goodman.
Dave Foley.
Is that Axel Foley's brother?
I don't think so. And, Jay Leno playing the Jay Leno car.
Right, with the big chin. and you could tell that it was Jay Leno.
Oddly enough, the car that was supposedly Governor Schwarzenegger was not voiced by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Voiced by somebody named Jess Harnell. And he's credited as Sven the Governator voice.
They did have Mario Andretti in this movie.
And also the Ferrari guy.
That was Michael Schumacher. Michael Schumacher was the Ferrari, and Mario Andretti was a race car that showed up in that group.
Listing all these off, it's like somebody's going, okay, list. But I mean, I think all this really does is to culminate to say that, wow, Pixar doesn't just pull a voice to say, okay, here's the Ferrari. They pulled the Ferrari guy. They pulled the Indy guy, Mario Andretti.
And that's what I was getting ready to add, or rather to add to what you just said, is it's not just the voice talents, it's the voice talents that people who go and watch NASCAR or people who watch IndyCar racing or Formula One racing, that they're going to recognize. Those are big names in those sports.
Yeah, basically anybody who's an automotive fan at least heard these names, if not recognized the voices.
And again, that's part of Pixar's depth at that point, was they could go to people like this and say, hey, we've made a few good movies, maybe won an Oscar, maybe a Golden Globe. Would you mind showing up
in our movie?
Just saying a couple of lines? And like Darryl Waltrip, one of the things that he is famous for in the racing world, and you hear it in the movie, is when the race starts and they drop the green flag, he goes, boogity, 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 let's go racing, boys. And he does it in the movie. You're like, hey, that's his signature line. You've got to get it in there. So it added realism again to the NASCAR side of it, because they're NASCAR fans taking their kids and going, hey, there was Darryl Waltrip. Okay, I'm making fun of NASCAR fans. I'm sorry. I am a NASCAR fan, and I do not speak like that. So they don't all do it.
So we're talking about the strength of Pixar, of the emotion that they put into this, the characterization, and finding the right voice talent. Another thing I like to talk about now is something that you see a lot of in Cars that you can really appreciate is the filmmaking itself. They talk a lot about this, and I know about it because the special features, the making of, they talk about it and everything, and it really gave me an appreciation. But if you look at the way that this movie was artistically expressed, it'll give you much more to appreciate. And the big example that I'll use here, and of course, like I said, if anybody else, if you want to learn more about it, look at the making of on the special features of the Blu-ray, is the difference between the opening scene arena and the climax. And if you saw the opening scene, the arena, it takes place at night. You don't see the surrounding city. It's pretty much just focused on that arena. It gives you that enclosed feeling.
Yeah, like everything came to this point. This is the thing you need to focus on. Yeah,
this is it. This is all there is. Which, to me, that's Lightning. It's all about now. It's all about here. It's all about me. Of course, as he goes through this journey, much more wide open space. And so when you look at the arena in California, it's daytime. It's wide open. You see much more of the crowd. It's everything. And of course, if you want to look at it this way, the focus wasn't entirely on Lightning McQueen. I mean, yeah, it's like, is he going to be the rookie that wins the Piston Cup? But no, there was others. There's Doc Holliday. There's little Luigi, who's like the pit crew guy now, who's like everybody laughs at until he's pit stop.
Doc Hudson, by the way.
What did I say?
You said Doc Holliday.
Yeah, Doc Hudson.
There was a shootout at the OK Corral. That's okay. And I remember seeing that. I wasn't thinking about that when I was watching the movie, but now that you bring it up, I recall that during that last race scene, you saw a lot longer shots where it was more him coming along instead of what you saw in the first one, where it was just him centered on the camera, hopping through cars and passing cars and doing all that kind of stuff. So now, on the flip side of that, there were only 3 cars in the race, and from my NASCAR fan standpoint, NASCAR has tie-breaking rules, so they would never be in a position where they did that. But it was intriguing that they had this plot vehicle to get to just a 3-car showdown.
I know you're the NASCAR fan. I'm surprised you haven't brought this up yet. But again, it was in the special features. It was in the making of. That last act of selflessness that Lightning McQueen exhibits by helping the king across the finish line was, from a NASCAR point of view, it was stated that it was entirely illegal.
Oh yeah, it was completely against the rules. They even said that in the movie, though.
That was the thing, when they were talking to their, for the lack of a better term, their advisors about it and everything, and they said, yeah, and at the final scene, we're going to have them do this, and they were going, you can't do that, that's totally against the rules. And they were going, it's like, whoa, what are we going to do? That's like our story, that's our hero finally showing that he's gotten over himself, that he's achieved a certain point and everything, and now he can't do it and everything. So they added that line later on saying, hey, can he do that? It's like, well, just call it a close draft or something like that.
He's not pushing him, he's bump drafting him.
So, yeah, I mean, it's, again, a little bit of trivia there.
I didn't know that was what had happened, but the way they played it, it made perfect sense from an emotional storytelling standpoint, and from the NASCAR standpoint, it's not like you're watching this going, well, this is real NASCAR. Why aren't they following the rules? This is real NASCAR. When the car jumps up on the wall, stretches out his wheels to pass other cars, you already kind of know it's not NASCAR, so it's not like you really have to adhere to the rules of the sport.
But I'm sure if you had a discussion about it on Facebook, there would be a lot of people out there going, that's against the rules, it's so fake.
I don't think so, because I think they'd appreciate that it was a kids, that it was aimed at kids. And I'm sure somebody argued about it. I'm sure somebody had an issue with it. But I think the very small number of people will definitely be drowned out by the people who thought that this movie was pretty okay. One of the other things that Pixar captured in this movie, and a lot of how it relates to NASCAR, I've been to a couple of races, and the music that you hear in this movie is very, very similar to what you're going to hear at a NASCAR race. A lot of the songs are even played at NASCAR races now because they were in cars. And I found that the music in this movie was very well written, and those things that weren't written for the movie were absolutely great additions to the movie of existing songs, like the Route 66 song. That's a classic song, and it played well, obviously, because of the Route 66 tie-in, but the not original music was exceptionally well selected and appropriate.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, the genre of music that they use, I'm not what you would call like a big fan of, but I definitely own those pieces on my iPod because the tie-in with this movie and the kind of visualization and the emotion that they do invoke. So I have to say, yeah, spot on with that.
So speaking to emotion, I know we haven't really talked about it yet, and we did touch on it during The Incredibles, was that in every Pixar movie, at least as far as I recall, you said that there was a moment where you had an emotional reaction?
Oh yeah, I'm not ashamed to say that there is at least one scene in every Pixar movie that it makes me tear up a little bit. gets that lump in your throat, and when the wife looks at you and you're like, don't look at me, there's a lot of those moments. But this one, surprisingly was the moment Doc Hudson showed up at the final race, where Lightning thought, it's me and Mac, that's all he thought, the truck, and the truck was like, hey, I'll do my best, but then when he realized he had a pit crew and Doc, and it wasn't just that Doc showed up, he was the legend that he thought was all but forgotten, but when the camera went onto him, everybody remembered. And that was that awestruck of seeing a legend like that show up in an event. And I've been to events like that where there's a legend that makes an appearance. And yeah, to Uber fans, that can be incredibly emotional. And I understood that. I empathize with that and everything. So I think that's why that was the scene that did it for me in this movie.
Okay. I can understand having an emotional response to that scene. It was pretty powerful. I did like the forgotten hero angle and the tie-in to Doc Hudson first being very antagonistic towards him and then respecting that he actually paid attention and learned and grew from the experiences that they shared. My personal favorite scene was when Lightning and Sally are out for just a drive, and it sort of brings them closer, but it gives you that nostalgic driving feeling, because I know when I get in the car and I go somewhere, I want to get on Interstate 40 and haul ass and get to where I need to be, and I don't want to stop and pee any more than I have to. I want to stop, pee, gas, food, go. That's what I want to do. So I'm an Interstate 40 kind of guy, and seeing that scene kind of, especially on this rewatch, and especially after I just drove from Virginia to Chicago, and it was pretty much get on the freeway, haul butt, are we out of gas? Okay, let's pee and get gas. Okay, we're back on the road. And I did that same thing, and I know that I have missed a lot of things along the way, and there is that sort of pipe dream, if you will, that one day I will make that drive in my own leisurely time and see what there is along the way and kind of admire the view, because I used to go out for a drive every now and again, and I would be on the freeway or on a highway and drive by one of those vista points that you see every now and again, and pull over and just stop and look out. I took a trip from when I was stationed on the West Coast in San Diego. I drove up Interstate 5 to Oregon, to my hometown, and on my way back I left a couple of days early so that I could take my time, and instead of going over to Portland and getting on Interstate 5 and heading straight south, I cut through the middle of Oregon, and then I made a short trip over to Crater Lake just so that I could park my car, walk down to the lake, take a couple of pictures, just kind of enjoy being there for a few minutes, and and take a look around and enjoy the scenery. And then I walked back up to my car and I got in and I left, but I still took the time to at the very least stop and see the thing that I'd been driving by for a good 6 to 8 years, when I was stationed in the Navy, driving back and forth to my hometown. So that was the part of the movie for me that was emotionally touching. I didn't cry or anything, and again, not that there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying that was a part that kind of touched me a little bit, because it reminded me that we do all need to stop and smell the roses, if I could borrow that cliche for a second, take a look around and admire and appreciate what you have access to and what you can see and the things and the people around you. So that was kind of my emotional moment with the movie.
Yeah, if there's a movie though that you're going to quote on this sentiment, it'd have to be Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he says life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
It's true.
Yeah, but I can totally get on board with that sentiment, because in my younger days, I should say, late teens, 20s. My way of impressing a young lady was after dinner, find some windy road in LA somewhere, mostly Mulholland or somewhere near there in the Hollywood Hills and everything. And especially at night, it was relatively dark, but you also had the city view in some areas and everything. Yeah, just take that drive. Just go for a drive. We didn't have a destination, we just went. A lot of times we ended up in Malibu, a lot of times, maybe further north along the coast or whatever, but, through Topanga Canyon, Malibu Canyon, all those were great drives or anything. So, yeah, I totally get that emotional feeling. Yeah, that wasn't the one that did it for me, but I get it. I totally understand what you're describing there.
Well, the interesting part is as we grow older and we see our kids grow up, and you realize that sometimes you get so stuck in life, career, this, that, and the other thing, that you sort of miss some of the stuff along the way. There's a part of it that is just life. We're not all independently wealthy, and we have to do work and that sort of thing. But there are times when you have to take a look and go, wow, am I too focused on the thing that I'm doing at this place that will not be here for the rest of my life? Am I enjoying the things that are around me? And that's why, like I said, that scene kind of gets to me a little bit.
I think that you talking about this is a good place to bring this other point that I wanted to talk about, and this is to endorse the theme park. Is you can really kind of get a little taste of that experience through Cars at Disney's California Adventure, and more specifically Cars Land. Because if you go on the Cars ride, if you can stand waiting 2 hours in line, because it's still a very popular ride and it's new, they really put that aspect in there when you first get on and you're going through and you're riding in a car. They did a really good job of recreating that scene with Lightning and Sally and driving by the waterfall, looking at the scenery. It only lasts for about 10-15 seconds, but it really gave you that sense, because it's also there's the music playing. You really kind of live that scene. And of course, then the rest of it is showing, Radiator Springs, the characters, and then a race.
Oh, well,
which
there you
makes
go.
it the thrill ride that it is. But yeah, that's to endorse that, because, and just overall, the Radiator Springs that they have created, spot on, man. If you are a fan of this movie, you will really appreciate, because, for one, the characters of Cars are natural characters to drive around Disneyland. Because the technology exists that now you have living cars. Lightning McQueen, the DJ car that had all the CDs in the back, those two will make regular appearances. And Cars, I think now that the new movie came out, and I don't know the character, but the yellow car, who's like his new coach, I guess.
Yeah, that would be Cruz Ramirez.
She shows up now in Cars Land for people to take pictures of and everything. But yeah, I mean, like I said, natural. You see him driving down the road, and you're like, oh, there's Lightning McQueen. Wow, and it's him. It's the car. And so that's kind of a natural blend there, which is perfect. But the other thing that I loved about Cars Land, and it was mentioned in Cars, George Carlin playing the little hippie VW bus.
Hey, did you try the organic fuel, man?
Yeah, and keep that in mind. There's a little question there that I'm going to ask after I bring up this point. Just before Lightning shows up in town, they're all just kind of sitting at Flo's, and they're watching the traffic light in the middle of town blink. And he goes, "Hey man, you notice that every third blink is longer?"
Yeah.
And then of course the Sarge is like, the 60s weren't kind to you, were they? If you go to Cars Land at Disney's California Adventure in Los Angeles or Anaheim, and you find that traffic light and you watch it, every third blink is longer.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And to me, that's such attention to detail.
That's a Disney thing. They are famous for their detail-oriented presentations.
Yes. But Cars Land also has Fillmore's tent, where you buy the organic fuels, but it's a fruit and juice stand. Sarge's surplus store is there. The Tower of Tires is there. So I mean, if you ever really want to live this movie definitely take the time to go to California Adventure and check it out.
When did they put that together? Because I don't recall seeing it, and I don't know if it's at the Disney World.
It opened June of 2012. So it's about the last 5 years. It's been around 5 years. But be prepared. You're either going to stay in line for 2 hours, give or take another half hour or 40 minutes. Or if you can stand being away from your family, going as a single rider, you get in a lot quicker.
That's definitely a way to do it. I remember going to theme parks when the girls were younger, and we could do the child swap. So one of us would ride, and the other would hold the girls, and then we would swap out so that we could both ride the rides. That was usually a much quicker method of both getting to ride the rides as opposed to just waiting in line. One of the other things that we also did and worked out pretty well was we would do the fast pass, and because you can only do at the time you could only do one fast pass at a time, we would fast pass one, and then Christy would fast pass the other one, and then we would just child swap, so it's like we got 2 fast passes. Yeah,
Nice.
Tricks of the trade.
Yeah, that's how you get through the theme parks.
We read it in a book, so it wasn't like we just made this stuff up and broke some rule. It was there. It's just a rule that we took advantage of because we could. So, is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
There's just 2 little points I want to bring up. So I bring up this question now, and this is pure moviegoer nerd talk. In the movie, we see the cars enjoying a beverage with their mouths, and we assume it's gasoline or whatever. But we also see them pump gas through a gas inlet like we do. And of course they use their tires to hit a pedal, and the gas thing goes into Lightning McQueen and basically his butt or whatever. I don't know, but
yeah, I would call it his hip more than his butt, but okay.
Yeah, okay, his hip or whatever. But yeah, that's the thing. So where does the nutrition actually come from?
Well, the gas makes him go, and Flo's was an oil shop, so they could go in and get a quart of oil. So that was what they were putting in their engines, in their mouth hole. At least that's my understanding.
Okay, because I mean, when Fillmore says, drink some organic fuel, man, and they see him, and Lightning is taking a sip out of a gas can with his mouth. But then there's also a scene when it's like, okay, I'm here for my daily ration, and Sally fills up his tank and says, don't worry, he's not going to run, we're just going to go for a ride together. It went in through the conventional gas inlet. So it's kind of weird to think. It's like, okay, so where exactly are they being nourished?
That's a good question that I don't have an answer for. I think it depends on what part of the story you're trying to tell.
Okay, like I said, thought I'd bring it up. Listeners, discuss, talk amongst yourselves.
Bring it back to us, provide us with some feedback, but we'll get to that later. So it's funny that you bring that up, because one of the things that I was thinking about when I watched this movie again, and I've thought it before, but just because we're doing this, when he's driving in that first race and he is just tearing up the track, lapping everybody, passing everybody, and we already talked about tires, and he blows 2 tires. Those are like his feet, right? So doesn't that hurt? I mean,
I would say that those are like his shoes, and it's like
so
the
his
runner,
rims would be his feet, because he was tearing
his
those
rims
up
would
too.
be his feet. I mean, just think of it as an Olympic sprinter who loses his shoe and now he has to run barefoot.
Yeah, but he was
still
lighting
hurts.
them on fire. I mean, he was creating sparks in his feet.
Oh, that would hurt him.
Yeah.
Like it would hurt a runner who has to suddenly run barefoot, which I don't know if that's a good analogy, because there's a lot of Olympic runners who do run barefoot. So
yeah, I don't think that one holds a whole lot of water, but I think it makes a point.
Yeah, I mean, close enough.
It's like losing a shoe mid-run when you're used to running with shoes.
Yeah, I would say that.
But yeah, so some of the car's logic kind of escaped me, but again, just goes back to what we'd said before about a lot of things. You just push the I believe button and you sort of roll with it, and it doesn't mess up the story, so it was really just a convenient way to do a thing without interrupting the flow of the movie.
So the other point I wanted to bring up, or say, I don't know if point is the correct one, but the other little thing I'd like to bring up again, and this is Pixar connecting the universes, and I'm not going to get too deep into the all Pixar movies are part of the same universe, and it's a really long and convoluted timeline. I'm not going to get into that, but if you ever want to look it up on YouTube, there's a lot of videos about it. They pretty much say the same thing about how Pixar movies are all connected. You could look at it as like, oh, it's just a movie company recycling old animation to save money, but people actually believe that they're making real connections. So look that up. But in the vein of Pixar using its own material, are you familiar with a lot of the old Pixar shorts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you remember the one called For the Birds?
That was the one where all the birds were sitting on the power line or telephone wire?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bunch of little birds sitting on it, and then Big Bird shows up, chaos ensues. It was really funny. They make an appearance in Cars.
Yep.
You did see that.
I want to be the superhero nerd guy that I think I am, but no, I didn't notice it. I read it on the internet.
Okay, I'm not claiming to be the superhero guy. I just noticed it the first time I saw the movie, and but that's the thing. I mean, I could say I'm the superhero guy, but I'm the superhero guy that nobody else notices, because when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, did you see that? And everyone else was like, what? Shut up, we're watching a movie. I was the only one who saw it. And then, of course, at the time, I didn't have the means of looking it up and saying, yeah, For the Birds, I saw them, It's like, don't you guys remember that little short with the birds on the telephone wire? And everyone's like, no. That was my little experience with that.
Nice. I didn't catch it, and there were certainly a lot of Easter eggs that were related to Pixar's shorts as well as their previous movies, but some of them were just so fast that unless you were doing a freeze frame through the entire movie, I don't think most people would have caught them. Like, there's a couple of trucks with the Mr. Incredibles logo in there, and again, I'm reading that off the internet, or rather read it off the internet. Like you said, For the Birds, there's some A Bug's Life logos in the movie. There's some references to Monsters, Inc.
Of course, there was also the very adult little Easter egg in there. The truck stop, convertible waitresses with the tops down.
Oh, I don't think I really noticed that.
Yeah, look at that. I found that one on a YouTube video, but yeah, that reference was in there.
Okay, nope, didn't even catch it. And again, showing that connectivity. Dynaco is the name of the gas station that Woody and Buzz get stranded at in Toy Story.
Oh, really?
Again, just to build that whole universe theory. Yep.
Yeah. I'll have to double check that.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know, again, if there are any of these references in the not so Pixar but totally Disney movie Planes, but I do know that Pixar is very well known for connecting little things in their movies. Yeah, I was just looking on Rotten Tomatoes, and Cars is the second lowest rated Pixar movie, right ahead of Cars 2, which is
really
interesting. I wouldn't have put this that far down in the Pixar realm.
No, I wouldn't have either.
Goes back to what we'd said in one of our previous episodes. You like what you like. Doesn't really matter what the rest of the world thinks. I know that I have some horrible movies on my shelf that we will get to, but they are horrible movies that I care for a great deal. So while it's interesting to look at Rotten Tomatoes and see how other people felt about it, I don't really care.
No, nor do I. I mean, it's nice to see that people share your love for a movie if it rates very high, but it doesn't work the other way around. I mean, if you like a movie and it rates very low, it's like, oh well.
Yeah, whatever. You guys are just dumb and you don't understand.
You don't get it.
Yeah.
So I know this is something you usually ask, but I guess as good a time as any. It's like, so where does this go on your shelf?
Well, it is, sadly, I'm going to kind of confirm what we just talked about as far as ratings go. This is a general population movie. Again, while I appreciate Pixar for what they've put out, this is not my favorite of the Pixar movies. It's not my favorite Disney movie, or Disney distributed movie, however that works. It is a good movie with a lot of good fun scenes and a great soundtrack, but it's in general population. It's ahead. It's not at the rear. It's definitely in the 40th percentile or in the 40% range. It's ahead of the midpoint, closer to the top, as opposed to, behind the pack. It's a good movie, but it's not the best movie I've ever seen.
Well, I think this is one of the unique ones, and I don't know if I mentioned this. I had to have when we talked about The Incredibles. There is a special shelf, or at least a shelf level, where Disney and Pixar movies occupy. So it goes there. I keep them in order of release, but I keep Disney animated and Pixar separate. They occupy opposite ends of the shelf.
If I could stop you for one moment real quick. You own Planes. Where is that?
Yeah.
Physically, where is that in that mix?
That one.
Are you moving it?
I said I was with. I'm gonna have to think about that one, because it was in order of release. The reference I use is Wikipedia, Disney animated. They don't differentiate between Pixar and regular Disney animated movies. They just go in order of release. So I'm the only one, when it comes to that, I separate them on my own. And Planes went with the Pixar films. So I'll have to think about that if I have to relocate it to where the Disney films are.
I was just curious because I know you did mention it during the Incredibles episode. And now that we're talking about where it goes, I finally had the opportunity to ask if you were going to relocate it. So,
well, if it gets relocated, we're going to have to wait till further episodes. Ask me again.
Well, you know what we should do? We should ask our Facebook audience if Dan should relocate the movie out of Pixar and into Disney.
Okay, go ahead, guys. Give me your opinion.
We'll create a poll.
And then I will proceed to tell you why you are wrong. No.
So this goes in a special place on your shelf because it's a Disney Pixar movie, but as far as where this movie sort of belongs, in air quotes, where would you put it?
I'm sorry, what's the question? Because I think I said it, it goes on that special shelf with all the Disney movies.
Right, but if you were to say that this is the best of the Pixar movies, or the worst of the Pixar movies, or somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
You kind of covered it.
Yeah,
you kind of covered it.
Where amongst the other Pixar movies do you think I should put it?
Sure, if you want to put it that way.
I would have to say it ranks about mid-range. Because, obviously there are other Pixar movies which I rank much higher. Ratatouille being one of my favorites.
Interesting.
The Incredibles ranks pretty high.
Yes.
And then, it kind of goes from there, and Finding Nemo, Toy Story, Monsters and all that, and then comes Cars, and it's like it goes down. And like I said, not to say that it's a bad movie, but Cars 2 has to rank the lowest. It might get even lower if I take Planes out of that equation now, because it's not a Pixar movie. Because as much of an airplane enthusiast as I am, Planes could have been a better movie. So it ranked kind of low in that group.
Okay, fair enough.
Brave kind of ranks a little bit above that. Still in the low range. I
well, don't
thoroughly
spoil it.
Enjoyed that movie.
Don't spoil it, because I own most of these movies, and we're going to get there. So,
well, you asked that.
I did. I brought this on myself, as you said.
Actually, I gotta say, Wall-E ranks pretty high too.
Yeah, I did care a lot for Wall-E, and that was a classic example of the Pixar anticipation. You're like, I don't know what it is, but it's Pixar. I'm gonna go see it and just hope it's good, because they haven't failed me yet. Even the worst Pixar movie is still pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Except for Cars 2. Anyway.
I still enjoyed. So.
Yeah, I didn't really care for it. It was kind of fun, but it needed some work.
Yeah.
So, now that we know where everything goes on our shelves, and we have talked about the movie, and we are pretty sure we've gotten everything that we wanted to cover, but I did want to say, since this is episode 10, I kind of wanted to say this before we closed out with all the ways to contact us. One of the things that I have discovered in the 10 movie review related episodes that we have done is about 20 minutes from now, when we're done, I'm going to think of something I should have said, or I'm going to think of something else to say or to talk about. So we're never really done talking about the movies, and if you can think of anything that you think we didn't cover, or any ways that you think we should cover things, or once we pick the movie for our next episode, if you think there's some things you want to hear us talk about, feel free to contact us on our Facebook page, which is our primary means of using the social media, and that is if you go to Facebook and search for We'll Review It Our Shelves. You can contact us via the email at WRIOS2016mr@gmail.com. You can leave comments on the Podbean page where this podcast is hosted. You can leave comments on the YouTubes, because we're there. Look at me doing my old man thing. Oh, you get off my YouTubes! And you can leave us a review in iTunes and Google Play, and we certainly would appreciate that. And that will help other people find us. I know I have spoken to some people that have said they've told friends about it, and friends sounded excited to give it a listen. So if you have some friends you think might like this, please share it with them. As we went over 100 episodes between the recording of our last episode and this recording, I want to say thank you, and I think, Dan, you echo that sentiment.
Absolutely. It's just great to think that we're worldwide now.
That's right, we're international. But one of the things that I appreciate is that somebody's actually taking the time to listen to us, and now we're just asking for some feedback, so we certainly would appreciate that.
Absolutely. So, come to the part where we decide, or fate decides, what our next conversation is going to be about.
All right, let's push the random magic movie button. Find out what we're doing next.
Scooby-Doo's Spookiest Tales.
All right, there you go. Scooby-Doo's Spookiest Tales.
Huh?
Scooby-Doo's Spookiest Tales. That's the next movie.
Okay.
I told you this was random, and as if to prove a point, fate has given us one of the most random of random movies, and it's a movie that my girls used to watch when they were younger, so I think we'll have a lot of fun with our next episode. Dan, you want to take us out?
Ka-chow!
And there you have it. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you. You'll hear us next episode.